if you don't have it, then there's very little you can do. So, do you have a pay-as-you-throw in place? If you have a pay-as-you-throw in place, you're probably more interested in doing the better sorting. So, we saw that the impact would be less directly on households, but we did see that the municipalities actually can take steps, such as, for example, one of the things that they could do is just sort the waste, even if it's a mixed waste, sorting the waste before they would incinerate it, and therefore pull out a lot of materials which are recyclable. And I told you that these represent roughly about roughly half of it is recyclable. Not everything that you pull out once it mixed is, of course, you can recover for recycling, but still. So yeah, and we also looked at the job potential, and we saw that it would create many jobs because collection systems, recycling, they have many more jobs. So if you go on an incineration plant, I don't know if you have been. If you have, you will see probably very few people walking around there. They are mostly in a cabin, when they control, they operate the big crane. So you just, I think there are like maybe 4, 5, maybe 10 people involved in that, while separate collection, recycling, reuse, all these different things, you will have like hundreds of thousands of people involved normally. So yeah, so just wanted to make a comment about landfills, because the Commission also has to look into landfills. We think it's very difficult to include landfills for the reasons that landfilling is not like you put because the problem is the methane, and when you put organic waste in landfills, it decays for years. So you have a lot of historic emissions, so you're not able really to measure the emissions that come from activities that you do today, what is needed for carbon pricing, because otherwise you just penalize something that happened many years ago. So it's quite difficult. And also we are kind of still unable to measure even methane emissions from landfills. And I have a graph here, you can see like a lot of, what is being measured normally from landfills is the one which is captured, so by the wells. So, but the wells, they're not capturing everything. They are basically capturing only about maybe maximum 50%. So a lot of the emissions are diffused, and so it doesn't really work with a carbon pricing system. So yeah, it's a problem. So particularly for landfilling, what is happening now in Europe, and what we think also could be actually alternatives, because one of the discussions, what Marina also mentioned, was one of the questions is like, if you include incineration, would it lead then more landfilling in Europe? And we don't think so, but obviously, because there's a very strong regulation in place already for landfilling, anything that is landfilling has to be treated normally. There's the issue of enforcement. So that's why we still have a methane emission from landfills. So a couple of things that we are working now, and the Commission is working on, is ensuring that treatment actually happens. And related to that, do have a waste acceptance criteria for landfills. So whatever waste ends in landfills need to meet this kind of criteria, basically, which requires that it doesn't generate any methane when it's landfill. So it's something to do with respirometry, so basically it's degraded before it's landfill there. And we think it's for the landfills, from that perspective, like a complementary measure could be just simply have landfill taxes. But there is also happening something in parallel, so the Commission is also, because they think that it's maybe not enough, so they want to propose cap and trade, but not for the carbon emissions, but for the tonnages. So there's a discussion about it happening right now. We are not sure it's a good idea, because it's quite bureaucratic, but still we kind of participate in this dialogue, and we just think that if they're going to go ahead with it, it would be probably best to not just focus on landfilling, but the whole residual waste management. So like to start having a cap and trade system for the residual waste at the member state level. So just a couple of things I wanted to say still. I think one of the things is there's a big worry about the pricing and how it's going to affect operators, and if it will be passed on to households, because the price will increase by half. So there's one study done. Actually, it's not done by us. It was done in the case of UK. I don't know if Marianne know that. Which looked into how the operators could actually mitigate the price increase. And it's done by Suez, and I don't consider them to be the most progressive company, but I was happy to see that actually the conclusions are very much aligned with what we think. So they say that actually there's a really low-hanging, proven waste management systems, activities you could do in order to mitigate the cost. And roughly they found that could be mitigated by half, just by doing, for example, one of the things that they suggested to pick up, for example, residual waste less often, less frequently, so that people actually will do more sorting to put the recyclables in the bags that they correspond. They also say that they should strengthen the EPR, so it's the extended producer responsibility schemes for particularly for plastics, and to maybe extend it to textiles, which is already happening in Europe also. We'll have an EPR on textiles in 2028. And also doing sorting, like as one of the options. So yeah, just to conclude, my conclusion is that definitely we should include incineration at the EU level, and because it will help us it's an EU mechanism, because we have already the carbon pricing in many countries, and if you calculate it, like all the countries where they have a carbon pricing already, it's roughly half of the incinerators already in the scope. Because we have in Norway, we have in UK, we have in Netherlands, we have it in Sweden, Denmark, and now in Germany. So half of them already included, and carbon pricing would at the EU level would help to harmonize it, because because we don't want that the waste starts to be exported from one country to another, because it's a lower price. So it's good to have it, but most important, of course. That it would be a strong incentive now to incinerate less and do something else with it instead. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janek. Thank you for this very comprehensive overview of the topic and the pros and cons, but most like the pros. And of course, for everyone here, this report is available in the Zero Waste Europe website. So please go there and please look at all the detail in this report. Thank you for clarifying the role of incineration in the waste section, the contribution to climate change, the necessity to really put these emissions under regulation, and actually how these, including them in the emission trading schemes, could be a policy tool that could drive the waste management upstream in the waste hierarchy, which is always our preferred option to incentivize prevention, reuse and recycling, which is really where we should be all leading to make sure that we can comply with the Paris Agreement goals and all the commitments from the European Union as well. So thank you so much again. And our next speaker is Zainab B from Equal Right, and she's a climate justice and public policy expert with a strong background in economics. So thank you so much for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you very much everyone for having us here. So just closer the microphone. Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better now? Thank you very much everybody for joining us here. So I'll be taking a bigger picture look at what we are discussing. We will be first talking about a model that we've been working on at Equal Right called Cap and Share. So just to give you an introduction, Equal Right is an international organization. We are working globally, which we are focused on the use of cash transfers and basic income in advancing climate justice, resilience and equity. And we have been working on this just equitable model of carbon pricing called cap and share, which I will be talking in more detail about, and then Andrea would continue connecting how it's more relevant to the waste management industry for sure. So talking about cap and share, it basically has four models, and it basically talks about four various ways of transitioning into an economy that is more just, and looking at carbon pricing on how we could use the carbon pricing mechanism to raise revenues for justice oriented activities and giving back the money to the local communities. So when we talk about the cap and share model, it is divided into four elements. The first element would be cap. So the first element would be cap. So the cap would be placed on a maximum amount of fossil fuel extracted. It could be anything. It could be also relevant to a particular industry. For example, as per the waste management industry, it could be implied on higher emitting operations or other kinds of things. So putting a cap on the maximum amount of fossil fuel that can be extracted. So the cap and share model in itself is developed at a larger multilateral country level model, but then there have been several variations of it at by country model and industrial based model. Here I will be focusing on the larger vision around cap and share. So putting a cap, then each country would get a per capita share of the carbon budget based on which will be their national allowance. And the countries would issue license to fossil fuel companies for every ton of carbon dioxide extracted. The next element is charging the emissions or charging the extraction, and kind of develop a revenue model from the carbon budget. So each country would have a minimum price for selling the licenses, and there have been various modeling around what the price could be. And also this charge would increase annually because we want to de-incentivize people to transition away from fossil fuel extraction or other kinds of higher emitting activities. The other two elements would be the fund and the share. The idea is to develop a global commons fund, which is a particular fund wherein we will be collecting all the carbon prices, the taxations that we have been able to connect through it, and then use that fund as a base. We have been looking at several models wherein we actually use this to invest in the global Green New Deal or invest in activities wherein that leads to further enhancement and economic development of a local community. But the major fund, the most important fund, would go as basic income and cash transfers directly to communities. So when we look at the current climate finance situation here, even at UNFCCC, most of it is top-down, most of it is focused on infrastructure based. So how do we develop models that are more people-centered? How do we develop models that goes from bottom up? And cap and share could be served as a way wherein we are able to look at the higher emitting activities. We are able to identify those activities, put a carbon tax on it, put a charge on it, and kind of develop a fund that goes back to the people. So if we are able to actually implement a cap and share model at the entire world level, including all the countries, we can easily be able to generate $1.3 trillion in a single year. That is what we require. That is the quantum that the civil society has been asking for. And rest of the money would go as dividends to citizens of the world to be able to cope up with the economic changes they suffer as the price of the carbon increases with the caps. So this is what the whole model is about overall.
connecting the laptop. I have a new laptop. I have a laptop from the. I got. Hey, get this. It's from our friend. Well, I'll keep it. Vai, segura. Vai, corre. Dentro, los hombres! Los hombres! So they're inside. You got the fuel. Come. Help, come on. The men, Rob and Kim. Good. Espera. Vale, vai. Aqui. I'm here switching the fire. Top 30. Welcome to Brazil. Hey, sir. I'm moving the fuel.